on.
We're on. Hello.
Happy Wednesday. Welcome back.
Wednesday wisdom.
Now, Jean, we wanted to talk briefly about last week, right?
Yes.
I did. So just to quickly recap last week, we had two topics last week, and that was the intent to proceed and also the difference between a pre-approval and a loan commitment.
Yes.
So short answer, intent to proceed includes property address.
Yes. Yes.
And the pre-approval is separate from a loan commitment, and the difference again is going to be property address. So remember that even if you're pre-approved, you still have to go through a formal application process to get your loan commitments and move along that sales contract.
Yes.
So topic, we're going to move on to the next item in the sales contract, which is the mortgage contingency.
Perfect.
Awesome. So mortgage contingency, Jean, this is something that you actually fill in the contract, right? When you sit down with your clients to submit an offer.
Yes, we're giving a date on when we start with, is the property contingent upon a mortgage approval? And I'd say 98% of the properties, the contracts that we write are contingent on our mortgage contingency. I mean, the only other options really are cash. So,
Okay.
Yes.
So,
and then we do put in a date of when we would have a written mortgage approval.
Okay. So when your buyer needs a mortgage, then you come up with this date. And so typically when you're looking at a calendar, you're submitting this offer, what is an estimated timeline that you use for them to be able to get this mortgage approved?
Well, I think one of the first things that I like to do, and you and I have done this before in the past too, is when we have a buyer interested in a property and they're in a relationship with you, you've been their chosen lender already because you've written the pre-approval, and we assume that that's going to be the way that it's going to happen, that they're going to work with you. Many times I've talked to you and said, hey, Michelle, we're going to write an offer based on what you're seeing from these buyers. Is it better to write 30 days? Is it better to write 45? Or even 60. But on average, we're usually calculating 45 days or so, but it's a lot of times in consultation with the lender. Does that make sense?
Yes. So when you put the contract together and you determine the date for this mortgage approval to be completed, you're basing that off of the type of financing that the buyer is getting and what their lender is saying is going to be a realistic time frame.
Yes, now, we're not pulling a number out of our head to say, oh, we'd like to close on this date. There's many parties involved that are talking about that.
Okay, perfect. Now, so of course, when we work through transactions, we're always targeting that date, and that's the date that we want to actually commit to.
Yes.
But let's talk about whether that date is actually, always met.
Oh, can we refer to it as a moving target?
Okay, yes.
Because that's what I use. That is in our consult as well, and saying this is the date that we all want to shoot for. However, it can become a little bit of a moving target. That and the closing date, moving target.
Perfect. So I think it's really important to have that conversation with customers because I have had customers that, they go off of those dates and they feel like those are set dates and there is no flexibility around extending them, and they get nervous if the dates aren't going to be met. So I just wanted to briefly touch on reasons why an extension might be needed.
Perfect.
Okay, so delays in processing that I've seen is usually inspection periods. What have you seen?
A lot of things with inspection periods. Yes, in that especially we can get the inspection completed, but I think what you're defining is the resolution of any issues that have to do with the inspection, that the buyer is leery to then give you the okay to order the appraisal. So we kind of find those extensions in there, and conversations go on sometimes way too long, and that starts to affect things.
Okay. All right, perfect. So just as an example, everyone, the mortgage contingency is a target date that we are working towards, but if there is a delay with getting through the inspection period and attorney review period to resolve anything that did come up in that inspection, then that kind of pushes out all the dates in the contract. And typically to get an extension from the seller side is a non-issue. if they don't have any hard deadlines to meet. So I think that the exception is usually going to be short sales because there are expirations.
Yes. Yes.
And that's usually the biggest hurdle that we've had. Can you think of anything else that would be a reason why we wouldn't get an extension?
There's just been, each situation is different, and there's been some paperwork sometimes that if it takes longer to get paperwork from a certain party, then you can't get to that full mortgage approval until all the documents are there. A lot of it's related to if you ask the buyer to provide some documentation or a new set of pay stubs or bank statements, if the buyer hesitates or delays, that's a delay. So everybody needs to be on their game in being timely.
That's a good point. Yeah, we definitely have a lot of parties involved to be able to meet the target dates in the contract. And if we don't meet them, I mean, an extension request is not unusual.
Correct.
And it's usually approved. Each situation is different. The seller has to feel comfortable. And again, if they don't have any hard stops, to extend it, then usually we get the approval. So,
yes.
So that's all I wanted to touch on. Do you have anything else to add?
I think it again, and we've talked about it many, many, many times, in any transaction when there's an issue or a concern, whether it's positive or negative, something that's going to change a date, it's just communication. We got to keep everybody involved, everybody informed on what's happening, so that if we're asking for an extension, why, how many days are we actually asking for, how many do we need, so that either the agents, the attorneys, anybody can be saying, yep, it's just one paper, they'll have it tomorrow, no problem, just approve it, so that we're defining why.
Yeah.
That usually keeps everybody calm.
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Great information.
All right. Thank you, Jean.
Have a good day.
You too.